Welcome back. We can step away from movements in the ANC for a moment to discuss trade policy towards poultry, chickens. And it seems there's a move to try and another move to industry. There's been a long-running dispute with Brazil because Brazil produces chickens, sells what is called the white meat of the breast to Europe, and then sells what is called in international trade terms the brown meat, the drumsticks, the wings, to us at below cost price. That means it's impossible for our poultry producers to compete with the price that you would pay for Brazilian chicken in South Africa. The chair of the Poultry Association is Izaak Breitenbach. Good afternoon to you. I mean, this issue's been going on for ages and ages. What kind of protection do you think our industry actually needs?
I think, Stephen, the question should be what should we be doing to create great industries? And unfair trade and illegal trade are simply not the way to get sustainable industries in any country of the world. If I look at the US has recently asked for anti-dumping duties on mattresses from China, and the EU have asked for anti-dumping duties against aluminum imports also from China. And those are really efforts to try and put international trade on a fair footing. We also hear continuously that the moment that a tariff is granted, that the price of chicken will go up. That is certainly not the case. And I've never seen evidence in the South African context of that. Neither have I seen that with the MFN duty, strong, viable industry for South Africa.
How would we go about doing this? Would we have to go to the World Trade Organization and say, look, we want a tariff?
Stephen, yes. The way that it works, at the moment, we've proven 9 countries are dumping their product in South Africa. And a new story will break next week where we will expose how MDM, mechanically deboned meat, is used to circumvent paying the tariffs that are actually in place. So the way that we do this in the South African poultry context would be to stop all forms of dumping. And I think if we look at the program you had on yesterday of the farmers in Natal, duty dumping, almost 2 years ago, Rainbow closed an abattoirs single shift, 1,300 business. And those people are calling and saying, we need fair trade now so that we can actually make good money and have a competitive local industry, not just for the big guys, but also for the small guys. Okay. The problem is that the small guys suffer more.
No, sure. I mean, have we tried just speaking to these 9 chicken producers you say are dumping? I mean, I presume Brazil is one of them. I mean, are these countries even actually able to control their industries? I mean, are they actually able to stop this kind of dumping, or are the companies going to just try and get around it through what you've discussed already, the mechanically deboned meat?
Certainly. I personally discussed this with the export organization from the European Union. I also discussed the problem before we applied for anti-dumping duties with the European Commissioner in Pretoria. And I asked him and said, if we can't have other means of solving the same problem. The difficulty is that we don't know always whether it's the country the exporting company causing the problem by dumping, or whether the prices change on water as the ship moves from Europe to South Africa, as an example. So to answer your question, we have had extensive consultations with them. We couldn't get to another way of solving this particular problem, and now we have instituted or requested ITAC to investigate anti-dumping duties against Brazil and 4 more European countries. And I believe if once we have that, we will be able to compete on an equal footing, and the industry will start to grow, and we will create more local consumption and more jobs locally.
Izaak, I mean, trade policy, very, very complicated, all sorts of unintended consequences. Do you expect any of these countries to sort of try and oppose it? Do you expect them to perhaps try and sort of respond in some other way, impose some sort of duty on our goods? I mean, that would be the last thing we wanted.
Absolutely. I think it's important to say that luckily most of these measures are legal or economical in context, and not a subjective type of process. Specifically in terms of an anti-dumping duty, that is more or less a calculation. All the other duties are very subjective. The applying country can decide to go a bit higher than lower than the actual calculation. We've already had some feedback from the European Union that they would like to stop some of our exports to the European Union because we are stopping illegal trade into South Africa. And I certainly explained to them the difference between the two. We are exporting citrus and whatever legally to the EU, but they are exporting chicken portions unfairly to South Africa. And the classic definition is that they're actually selling the product in South Africa at a price much lower than they sell in the EU. If we talk about a product like deboned thighs or thighs, that product will sell in the excess of 50 Rand in the European Union, and that is imported into South Africa, in this particular case that I remember, from the US for 6 Rand and 85 cents. The other question is, who's making the money here? This is not to the benefit of the consumer, and I think that is why we do not see that prices go up when we get these tariffs. And that's because a couple of people importing product actually benefits from this whole process, and not the consumer.
Izaak Breitenbach from the Poultry Association, do appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. It's an important story that has all sorts of impacts on the way that we live.